My name is Dominique Brossard. I'm professor and chair in the Department of Life Science Communication, and it's my extreme pleasure to welcome today Alex Clark. Alex Clark and I have briefly worked together on maybe like something he's going to talk to you about. But most importantly, you need to know that he's a science studio producer for PBS NOVA, also instructor of video at Columbia Journalism School. Actually, Dietrich and I were mentioning how we love his setup and we're so jealous of his setup for today's talk. He has produced Snapchat, Quibi, Facebook shows, and feature documentaries for American Experience, NBC, and now this. Recently, he produced and co-hosted Vox Emmy-nominated YouTube show, Glad You Asked. For Nova, Alex develops curriculum for emerging science storytellers and produces video content combating misinformation in the media. So I'm sure you're as excited as I am to welcome Alex today in a Colloquium.
Hey, thank you, Dominique. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here and really appreciate the invite. And I just want to spend some time talking to you about the future of social video and how misinformation has been proliferating online in recent years, as well as how social video is integral to how we understand the spread of misinformation today in this mobile-first society. So I will share my screen in a second, but a few things about me. My name's Alex Clark. I have been a video journalist for about 10 years. Got my start working on YouTube videos when I was in undergrad and just said, hey, I'm gonna make a video every day for 150 days and it's gonna be great. I just wanna do all I can to try to learn what goes into making a catchy video from the beginning. What is the hook that you need? How do you edit? What are the tips and tools that you can integrate into your videos to make sure that they're going to be lasting and that they'll connect with an audience that you want to serve? Eventually, I went back to grad school and I've been focused on documentaries. But in the mid-2010s, we saw this emergence of a new type of video that was becoming really popular on the internet through social media platforms. And that's a bit about what I want to talk to you today. We have seen a gigantic boom in social video. There was a pivot to video that I'll mention in a bit, where just about every major news organization decided that we want to create video content to serve our audiences because we feel that people are watching videos more often on their phone, and this is the way that we connect with them directly with high quality visuals, with breaking news. In some cases it worked great. In other cases, they learned that there was a lot more that goes into this than they ever expected. So as a result, we see formatting and series that kind of streamline the process. So let's hop into it. I'm going to go ahead and share. Feel free to stop me at any time. This will probably take about 25 minutes, and then I'm happy to share some work that I've been working on recently, and then also get into your Q&A. So recently, we've seen this reemergence of misinformation in politics, in media, in science, and it's really been kind of consuming all of the social media platforms that we've been looking into. So this is in the last 5 to 6 years, we've seen the growth of a lot of these new types of misinformation being spread online. The questions that I had would be, why is misinformation so prevalent and how can we begin to turn the tide? Recently, we've seen a lot of misinformation around COVID-19, which is one of the things that I focus on in a video series for PBS NOVA. And also in the 2016 and 2020 elections, misinformation played a big part in how voters both understood the candidates and understood the issues behind them. And often when you go into something with predeterminations about what is true, what is truth, what is fact versus reality, it is very difficult to change these ingrained notions of what you believe. So a few examples I had here were around COVID-19, as early as April, we began to see fake news messages being spread that the CDC was warning against wearing masks, which was completely untrue. But these were spreading by the millions, had over 100,000 shares on Facebook. It was exploding on Twitter. There were multiple videos that spread false information about COVID-19 vaccines, both about what they would do to you on a health level, as well as who was behind them, who was organizing them, and how they are being distributed and created. And then also in the politics, we saw misinformation was something that politicians began to address head on as well. So one of my favorite things from 2016 was Hillary Clinton had an explainer about Pepe the Frog. And some of you may know Pepe as like this lovable, fun frog that has been really taken by a certain group and used to kind of share certain viewpoints. And a lot of them were negative towards the leftist kind of party in the United States, and decided to make that central to some of her messaging. So what we saw really from 2012 to 2016 at the end of the Obama administration to the beginning of the Trump administration was a lot of new labels and a lot of new ways that we start to recognize how we consume information. So the label fake news became pretty prominent, made headlines in many major news sources, and I actually think that term is not the best way to kind of label what we're going to be discussing today. We've really put them into categories of misinformation and disinformation, which I'll get to in a moment, but a slew of new issues as well. Along with these new concepts of how we start to put information into buckets, we start to see new labels for the issues that we're facing, which arose just in the last 5 to 6 years. So cancel culture, hashtags being spread on social media attached to videos as well as print content, hashtag BLM, hashtag MeToo, new opposing extremist viewpoints that are labeled as Antifa or alt-right, and then new ways that information is being spread digitally, leaks and doxing. All of these are kind of brand new to us, and we've just had to come to terms with them in the past several years about how to discuss and how to really understand what all of these new terms mean. So quick definitions to get us going here. Misinformation, quite simply, when it comes to what we discuss and what we consume in media, can just be explained as false or inaccurate information. Disinformation, on the other hand, is false or inaccurate information which is intended to deceive. So this intent is truly the main difference between the two here. Disinformation can be used in multiple ways, whether it's in politics to advance a candidate's viewpoint, whether it's in science, which is where I've been covering a lot of the content that we've been doing with NOVA, to either prove or disprove scientific concepts, or it could just be used to sell ads or to sell products that people wish to use in their daily lives and to get more eyes on. Social media now is one of the primary ways that people are learning what they want to buy at any given time. I don't know if you've seen Instagram recently, but the Instagram ads are incredible. I feel like I'm always finding new things that I want to purchase through Instagram because it's just so spot on. They have your complete history of everything you've been searching. They know what you like, how long you look at it. And that is really going into the content that you're being served, as well as the advertisements that you're being served. Traditionally, in broadcast media, we did not have that level of intense targeting when it came to your audiences. So when you're served a commercial, that is more for a general audience. That could be people from 18 to 55. And you're going to be really seeing something that is not going to be too controversial. However, with this super targeted type of advertisement that we have now, because of social media, you are served print and visual content that is really hitting a nerve. It's trying to give you exactly either what you want to hear or something that you will talk about, that you will discuss and kind of incorporate into your daily time expenditure in front of your devices. Now, we mentioned fake news. I actually prefer not to use this term for many reasons. One is it has been at times weaponized against science communications. Secondly, it's kind of a loaded term. There's multiple interpretations of it, and there's just this heightened emotional investment that goes into using the term fake news. So whenever possible, we discuss misinformation from PBS NOVA and science misinformation particularly. So at the same time that we started to see this growth in usage of social media, the iPhone came out in 2007. between 2012 and 2016 is when we saw a huge growth in many of the platforms that we use today. The most phenomenal one, I believe, is Twitter. So during this time, Twitter just exploded, nearly 10 times their user base. Within 10 years, they went from roughly 25 million users on a daily basis to more than 300 million, which is roughly the population of the United States. And what we saw in social platforms is they determine how to monetize content. And this was something that was a long time coming. The valuations of these companies were really difficult because your Snapchats, your Facebook, YouTube, they had ways where they could serve ads, but they weren't really using all of the ways that you see today. Some that you see today are paid site traffic for just about anything that you want. If you have an article that is going to be external that you want to create on your own, you can pay to get people to view that article. You can target the audience you want and get them to go to your page. Hopefully with the intent of serving ads to them on that page or just boosting the amount of time they spend on your personal page. But the big thing that I discovered during this time period when I was just getting into social video is Facebook. And what Facebook did is they rolled out embedded ads in video. This was a monumental shift in the way that video was served online, because not only could you pay for your videos to be seen, but when you're creating video content that is highly watched, it is also putting some money in your pocket. So this became the overall monetary platform for many sites. We saw the social video boom in the mid-2010s, and media corporations decided to pivot to video for good reason. We also saw new social video first platforms such as Now This. I don't know if any of you have heard of Now This, but it's the #1 video platform in the world for younger audiences. And Now This doesn't even really have a website that they put time and resources into. Just about all of their content is shared through social sites. So they have YouTube series, they have streaming series, but the main one that they started on was Facebook series. Now This was one of, if not the very first social platform to decide to use what you see the text on screen or captions at the bottom of the video that kind of guide you on a journey as you're watching the video. And that was really important because of the way a lot of people view video content online. One common thing we used to discuss there is like, hey, if you're rolling out of bed in the morning, maybe you're next to your partner, you don't want to put the volume on full blast. You just want to find something, do a quick search, and maybe you're just going to look at the subtitles. So the majority of the videos as of 2015 that were watched from Now This were actually watched with the sound off. So the information which is shared on screen is that much more important. You're usually getting a lot less context about the information. There's less time for interviews and really in-depth discussions where you're really getting a headline being presented to you at the bottom of the video every 4 to 5 seconds is a new line that you have to interpret, and then you have to just decide whether you believe or not. It wasn't the only site to be doing this. We saw plenty of other social first platforms. There was Vocative, there was Upworthy, and many platforms decided to abandon their print sides and their editorial sides just to focus on video, with mixed results. So a bit more about my journey and the power and growth of social video. It's important to say that a view on Facebook may not be the same as sitting down for your NBC evening news and watching an entire episode. Really, a Facebook view nowadays is counted at 3 to 6 seconds, and those views can be a little larger than you would, a little exaggerated, let's say that. But while I was working at Now This, we started to make huge videos. On average, a producer might be pumping out 2 to 3 videos a day, but a video could get 20 to 30 million views in a single day. These were odd cases, but they began to come more frequently when we started to understand like the formula of what made video captivating. So while I was there, my top video had more than 100 million views, which is an astounding figure. People would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that kind of reach on YouTube traditionally before the advent of social video. And then overall 800 plus million views. And these were on a variety of topics. But one thing that I did want to point out is many of the same topics that get a lot of heat, get a lot of traffic on social medias, on Twitter, such as race relations, social justice, highly visual pieces, your heartbreakers. These are the same videos that would perform really, really well on social networks. So we were kind of using the same type of techniques and the same type of motivation to get viewers to watch as others were. I also worked for The Root, Splinter, Vox, and pretty much the same thing. You are creating content with the power to get millions of people viewing, millions of hours of watch time. And that is a lot of power to be placing in individual creators such as myself or small teams. So with 2016 is really where I started to see a shift in the amount of misinformation that was coming online. And the 2016 election was actually a turning point, in my opinion, for a lot of the content and the way that we perceive content that is coming through the pipes of the internet. So we had an election where there was no incumbent candidate. However, we had many opposing viewpoints on the candidates who were running. They were the most unfavorable candidates, according to polling in recent history. And there was a general lack of fact-checking and enforcement of their content and moderation on social platforms. So many people were able to post freely ideas and statements, as well as leaked documents without any penalty. And this was really the only time in recent history this has ever happened. Since then, many of these platforms have changed a lot of their policies. For example, TikTok, Facebook don't allow you to post campaign ads anymore. They don't want to take money from non-US sources for US campaigns. But this was really the Wild West in what we consider information being spread about breaking news. And I put this over here as well. One thing that is interesting is the top issues didn't really change that much, but the way that we were discussing them did change. So the economy was number one. Terrorism was at the top. Foreign policy, healthcare. These had been at the top of our kind of news cycle for quite some time. So it wasn't like there was one thing that was really pushing this change. What had changed was the speed and the frequency in which you could share media through social media. Forgive me, there's a bit of noise over here in New York. But so I like to talk about the Macedonian teens because that's my favorite story ever. In a way, it's just like capitalism gone rogue, but it's really a media story and how people present new news that we're going to share with our friends and family. So I shared that article beforehand. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I do encourage you to do so. But essentially what happened in the lead up of 2015 to 2016, there were news sites promoting print and video content where a lot of them were just young people in Europe who were getting paid via clickbait to create content that as many Americans would view as possible, would buy into, and would believe regardless of whether or not the content was real. And they really honed in on the same hot topics that were in the discussion for a lot of the social media news sites that you would see on Twitter. So racial justice and social inequality were two of the biggest topics that were being shared at the time. So there is a lot of overlap into what I was doing as a journalist at the time and what these young kids had figured out, essentially. So we're trying to hook viewers with catchy headlines, with the best visuals possible. We're focusing on hot button issues. We're operating in a highly competitive social landscape. And most importantly, there's a lot of adaptation needed. At any point in time, these networks, Facebook could say, hey, we decide to just stop ads on these videos, or hey, we decide to roll out a new program that's going to allow you to get more views on video content that features dogs. You are really at the whim of the platforms for what you produce, when it comes to the information you share if you want to be able to get the reach that you wish. So real quick overview into what led us at NOVA to kind of look into this issue. We're kind of laying out the landscape here. There's enormous influence in social media and social video, and platforms, Facebooks, your YouTubes, are motivated because they're in competition with other platforms. They're competing for your eyes, for your time, your data, and your money. Their algorithms are all basically enforcing this one thing, which is how do we keep your eyes on the page? How do we keep you interacting with our site as opposed to going to another social media site so that we can reap the benefits from it? And lastly, creator profitability has just skyrocketed. If you are an individual creator, if you are a citizen journalist, or if you're a bad actor, you can really make significant gains just by promoting the information that you want, and it's beneficial to you to do things that are, catchy, that have clickbait, and that target audiences that are more receptive to viewing your type of information. So enter NOVA. As many of you know, NOVA is the longest running science series on American television since 1974. NOVA and NOVA Education have this commitment to supporting accurate journalism and equity in STEM education. And we've also in the past several years have been expanding into streaming and digital formats. So when I was wrapping up a project and looking for where I would go next, who would be beneficial and where could I make some good in the world, NOVA was like the number one choice. Because they really hit a lot of the boxes that I was looking for, especially because we are trying to target younger audiences with a lot of the content that we produce. And these are the ones who are, in some ways, more savvy than audiences who are more used to looking at broadcast content. Younger audiences from as low as 14 to 25, let's say, have been adopting these new social platforms at an extremely high rate. And they have also been creating content at a higher rate than any other generation before them. So we have a NOVA Education team. These are a few of our members, and I'm happy to be a part of that team. Ralph, who might be attending today, is actually our Director of Education and Outreach. And we came up with this program, NOVA Science Studio, about 2 years ago. And NOVA Science Studio is really a curriculum-based program where we have 30 students from across the country working together in multiple cohorts. And they're learning the basics of science education, of science communication, and how to produce video content that will really shine and help them get a foot in the ground, so to speak, when they're looking forward into what matters. And NOVA Science Studio is also producing multiple videos on misinformation in the news, as well as misinformation in scientific discourse. So through the course, students will join it for about 6 months. It's kind of similar to Student Reporting Labs, or SRL, that is done by PBS NewsHour, where this is like a exercise where students will get a full fundamental understanding of everything that goes into producing a science documentary, and then they produce their own at the end of it. And in addition to tutorials, what I'm producing for NOVA is a series of videos on misinformation that's really breaking it down. Not only what misinformation is, but also how to identify it and what should we do when we see it? Like, what is the response? And a lot of that has to do with empathy, because it turns out we're all susceptible to believing misinformation when it's presented in a certain way. And these are a few of the topics that we're talking about in the series. So the series is called Misinformation Nation. I believe I shared one about how misinformation spreads. We also discussed why misinformation matters, misinformation in the news. And one thing we're really not afraid of is presenting examples of how misinformation has been used in ways to enhance discord or to steer discussions in a certain way. Again, this is targeted towards a younger audience, but the tips that we've been sharing are really supposed to be general and accessible to everyone. So earlier, before this discussion, I shared a piece that Dominique actually was in. And I want to share a quick video with you. So holler if you can't hear this. But this is a recent video that we posted, and it's giving kind of like a look at how misinformation is spreading in a digital landscape. So it's very silly, but I hope you'll give me about 5 minutes to share a portion of this video, and then I'll come on back and we can discuss and do a Q&A. So one of my favorite videos. So we are sharing these on our YouTube channel, and is everyone, give me a thumbs up if you can hear this? So one of my okay, fantastic. I'll start it and I'll stop it in about 5 minutes. So one of my favorite videos on the internet goes like this. There's a group of guys who are hardcore flat earthers. They don't believe the earth is round. So they design an experiment to prove the earth is flat. It's pretty simple. They want to shine a powerful light through boards from far away enough that if the world was truly round, the curvature of the earth would make it impossible to see a light held at equal height. Because if the earth is flat, they're going to see a light shining through both holes in the boards because there's no curvature of the earth. The experiment, however, proved the opposite, that the earth is round.
We don't see you, Enrique. Lift up your light way above your head.
Despite all of the evidence, they refuse to believe the facts and instead continue to spread misinformation. Sharing misinformation is a byproduct of human connection. Our need to communicate can be more important than making sure that all the facts are in place. Last episode, we talked about why misinformation is believed, but let's talk about why it's spread and how. For that, I have an example, and it's all about llamas. Let's say I wake up in the morning and I find egg on my car. It got all over my windshield. It got all over my Llama for Congress bumper sticker. That's the new candidate, by the way. It's a llama named Llama. So I text my neighbor and he responds, "No way, dude. They clearly don't want llamas running for Congress." That's right. They must have seen my Llama for Congress bumper sticker and retaliated. So I tweet out a picture of my car with the message, "We're getting egged over here. Llama intimidation much?" It gets 50,000 retweets in just a few hours. Within a week, signs start popping up all over the neighborhood. Other llama supporters are posting this. So I'm going along my business until one day I hear something. And I find a small nest of chickens chirping on the awning above my car. It appears that their eggs simply rolled down and fell onto my car. So I tweet out once again, guys, it wasn't anti-llama. It was chickens. But some people on social media continue to share the false claim, even some people who saw the retraction and the correction. A major news agency even reports on all the signs of the residents in the neighborhood fighting back against llama intimidation. But fortunately, no other eggings occur. So yes, the car had egg on it, but it wasn't a political attack. It was just a rogue egg from a chicken. Chicken? So why did the misinformation spread? I simply reported a fact to my neighbor, but then I jumped to conclusions and shared misinformation online. Some people then shared this misinformation because it also confirmed their belief of an anti-llama bias. Lastly, concerned neighbors posted flyers promoting the misinformation, and it all just got out of control. Even in this simple case, placing all the blame on a single group for misinformation is impossible. But back to reality. As a society, we've wrestled with intentional misinformation for years.
An historical example of advertising around snake oil sales, right? Well, it turns out that's a phrase that people are aware of, the notion of being a snake oil salesman, but it actually was a thing.
Okay, that's Brian Southwell, and he literally wrote this book on misinformation. And here's something you probably didn't know. We use the term snake oil salesman to refer to swindlers who intentionally mislead others. But the original snake oil salesmen were Chinese immigrants in the 1800s. And one product they brought with them to the States was, a snake oil that was rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which are found in many fish and can contribute to cardiovascular health. In the late 1800s, however, a traveling merchant named Clark Stanley began selling a product that he called snake oil. But it didn't actually contain snakes. Instead, it had mineral oil. It was unlikely to have any positive health effects. Why is misinformation something that it seems we just can't rid ourselves of?
When we're trying to think about explaining the diffusion of misinformation, it's important to realize all the reasons why people talk to one another, all the reasons why people engage with one another. And sometimes those reasons aren't necessarily focused just on the factual truth. Sometimes people are connecting with one another because of reasons of identity or reasons of community.
Dr. Southwell and okay. So I'm going to stop sharing for now and I'll come back to you. A few things I want to point out about that video is, our goal there was to really use a political example without any politics in it whatsoever. And I think that one of the things that I've learned kind of in this production process is it benefits nobody to start from a point of view that is going to turn people away from the topic at the beginning of it. And really, this is something that is a universal problem, which just has to do with the way that we interpret information around us. And by presenting things in a more neutral manner, it seems like the response that we've been getting is stronger and in some cases easier to understand the material as we're sharing it. But with that, I can open it up, and I'm so glad that you listened to my voice for all that time. So thank you.